Clock on the nose. Call to order the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission meeting on Wednesday, October 4. Notice of the meeting was filed in accordance with the Oklahoma Open Meeting Act. First, we'll start with call to order and find out who's here.
Okay. Chairman Stuckey.
Present.
Vice Chair Conway.
Here.
Secretary Potter.
Here.
Commissioner Putnam.
Here.
Commissioner Amos.
Here.
Commissioner Hunter.
Here.
Commissioner Ray.
Thank you. Would like to welcome Mike Patterson this morning. Glad to have you joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate being here, and thanks for adjusting your schedules a little bit so I could begin to attend these meetings.
Very
I
good.
know the governor was stepping on these with a cabinet meeting at the same time, so I really appreciate the accommodation.
Thank you. Item 3 is the approval of the commission meeting minutes from August 23. I hear a motion.
I'll move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Conway.
Aye.
Secretary Potter.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Amos.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Chairman Stuckey.
Aye. So ordered. Item 4, Director's Report. Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I'd first like to, in recognition of Secretary Patterson being here, really good to have you, and really good to have a aviator. I think the only one in history as the Oklahoma Secretary of Transportation, our first pilot. So we know where your heart is, and boy, we're happy about that. But would like to present him with the Oklahoma aviation story, which is the glorious heritage of aviation in Oklahoma. I think you'll enjoy that. I don't think you're in there, but we may add a chapter. I think Senator Inhoff's in there, and a 100th anniversary of Powered Flight commemorative coin. We're really glad to have you as our secretary, and glad you're here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yesterday, there was an interim study hearing about the Center for Aerospace and Defense Supplier Quality, House interim study. I testified about that. My main purpose for that was I wanted to make sure that the record was accurate insofar as Aeronautics, what I think you'd have to say, unequivocal support of CADSCU in the 9 years since it was transferred to Aeronautics. As I know all of you know, that came with a promise. It was transferred from OCAST. It was created as an appropriated program that came with a promise of appropriated dollars, which of course never materialized. Indeed, the last 4 years I was unable to even request appropriated dollars due to the budget issues being experienced by the state and being grappled with by the legislature. I did point out that the decision why did we make the decision we did? Why did you make the decision you did to no longer fund CADSCU at the conclusion of last fiscal year? Is very simple. We have $1.8 billion in needs over the next 20 years in our airport system. That is our core duty and function. And you look at all our revenue sources and we only have $1 billion, so we're $800 million short. While we had made proposals last session to try to deal with some of that and be responsible, only one of those made it through. One is still pending, that being about the exemption for aircraft put on charter tickets. That will be taken up next session. But I also reminded the legislature, and I was tactful about this, that it had been forced to take $4.2 million out of our revolving fund over the last 3 years. $3 million 3 years ago and $1.2 million last year because of the cap on our largest source of revenue, the aircraft excise tax. Representative Sears, who was on the committee, higher ed and career and technology education, knows all of this very well and was very, very complimentary and supportive in his comments with respect to the commission.
So Vic, what was the outcome?
What Representative Teague, who requested this, there was no, I mean, what's going to be the outcome is she's going to go forward and ask for $1 million.
So why meet?
Well, of course, it's going to take the full legislature to fund it. but she is going to go forward. I think she's gotten some good feelings from Speaker McCall. I guess we'll just wait and see how that comes out.
Okay.
I don't frankly think it's very optimistic. There is an effort too, as we were trying to do, to kind of retweak or modify CADSCU, kind of the Oklahoma Aerospace Institute. Some of you will remember that, to recognize or to try to implement some of the responsibilities of that entity, and that's one of her plans. I just think it's going to be a big uphill climb, but we shall see. I'm not sure she's got enough thrust on that, but we shall see. Next Tuesday, I've talked to some of you about this. We have really what I might say is our interim study requested by Representative Charles Ortega about protection of the military training airspace for our Air Force bases that is critical to those bases carrying out their mission. That will be an all-day hearing. I'll be testifying Tuesday morning. There will be 4 or 5 representatives from the military, 3 or 4 representatives from wind energy, and probably 1 or 2 representatives of, if you may, landowners, those coming probably from Farm Bureau and the Cattlemen's Association. A lot of issues in this particular subject. I think, though, that we might have, I've had several meetings with legislators in the interim. I think we might be moving toward a very workable compromise. I really do believe that there's no reason the 3 interests can't all be, the 3 objectives really, the 3 interests can't all be achieved here. Protecting military training airspace, having a robust wind energy industry, and also honoring the rights of private landowners. Why do I feel strongly about that? Proof of that is our administration of the Aircraft Pilot and Passenger Protection Act the last 7 years. In meeting with Representative Sanders yesterday, who's been somewhat of a champion and defender of wind, he got that. He understands that we have administered our responsibilities very responsibly over the last several years. We have, of the over 100 applications coming from wind energy, we've only denied 6% of those. And I think here's the tale, if you will, here's the bottom line. None of those have been appealed to you, and obviously therefore not to district court. So our reasons for denying those have been very well grounded. And what happens most of the time, because there is leverage, there is balance, we can deny. If a wind energy company wants to put a turbine right off the runway protection zone or whatever, or in that, we can talk to them and say, can't you move that 300 or 400 yards this way? And that's what usually happens. That is what almost always happens. So only in few cases have we absolutely denied. I'll report back to you about that after that hearing is held. In September, we had the National Association of State Aviation Officials meeting in Alabama. It was a very, even with the threat of, can I remember which one, Hurricane Maria. Originally, over 300 people were scheduled to come to our annual meeting and convention. As it turned out, about over 260 came, so a pretty good showing. I mean, we're right there off the panhandle of Florida, so we were definitely kind of in the path. I think about 35 exhibitors showed up. It was a very, very successful convention. I want to add to that there is a very, very good chance, in all likelihood, Secretary Patterson, I'll be talking to you about this, that next year, the annual NASAO convention will be right here in Oklahoma City. The reason for that is it was scheduled to be in Phoenix, in Arizona. Unfortunately, my colleague there, due to health reasons, had to retire prematurely last year, and that really kind of threw a wrench in things. So the city of Phoenix, the state of Arizona, withdrew the venue as the host for the convention, and that opened things up. I think we're really on the inside track. We've had good bids from hotels here, and I really think, I'm very optimistic that probably it is going to be here. So I'm sure that I'll need all your help to make this a success, and I have no doubt that it will be a success. One other thing I would note, and I was very, very honored by this, I received the Chairman's Award. There's, Sandra said be casual, look comfortable, look relaxed. I think she gave me a Benadryl prior to this picture. But I received this award from Chairman Brad Brandt. And really, I was very honored by this because it was somewhat really of an award for mentoring. You probably never realize how much you might mean to a person until something like this happens. And since Brad became a director in 2009, I've talked to him lots of times, and he made that clear in his introductory remarks about the award. It was a total surprise. Didn't expect it, and it was quite an honor. The last week, I made a presentation to the Boeing REACH Employees Group. These are recently hired employees at Boeing. A lot of engineers in the audience. Some of you have been here long enough. I'm talking really to Chairman Stuckey and Amos, maybe Commissioner Conway as well. I used to give a speech called Evangelism about the heritage of aviation and aerospace in Oklahoma and where we are today. I gave that in kind of an updated redux version because of our recently released economic impact study. I think that went over quite well. There were a lot of, wow, I didn't realize it was just that extensive, that big in Oklahoma. And I might add that the engineers in the audience, I was introduced by Steve Hendrickson. Some of you know Steve. He's the government affairs liaison for Boeing in this state and probably 14 other states in his region. He introduced me as the father of the engineer tax credits. After all, we did write that legislation, and we did champion it originally, and there were many expressions of gratitude as many of those engineers in the audience were receiving those tax incentives, and of course Boeing is receiving those tax incentives based upon hiring those engineers. There was also an interim study, I want to say probably 2 weeks ago, right around, that Representative Murdoch asked for. This is regarding the issue of federalism, federal regulation, state regulation, local regulation of unmanned aircraft systems. I did not testify at that. Representative Murdoch had asked me because of Senate Bill 630 last session, but I deferred because we're very fortunate. We have an expert in our state. James Grimsley is the only individual in Oklahoma that's on the FAA Drone Advisory Subcommittee. James knows more, he's forgotten more about this subject than I'll ever know, most likely. And I would encourage all of you, there's been a recent decision involving the city of Newton, Massachusetts, where the federal district court there said that in some respects, the ordinance that it passed had been conflict preempted. I don't want to get too lawyerly here, don't worry. Conflict preempted by the federal regulations, Part 107. I have included behind tab 4 basically a law review article, if you will, that James has written in response to that decision. That decision is being extrapolated and somewhat taken out of, represented as this means something more than it actually does. There's still a long way to go in settling this out. Indeed, if any of you are interested in this subject, a lawyer who is in aviation law has written an extensive paper on the history of airspace and who is the lord of the airspace in the United States. And he's gone all the way back to the Air Commerce Act in the 1920s. And interestingly enough, he found what he believes to be a Scrivener's error or mistake that's really somewhat consequential. If any of you are interested in that, I can get that to you. I did not include that, but I would encourage you strongly to take a look at the article that is behind tab 4 written by James Grimsley. Are there any questions, commissioners? Mr. Secretary.
Vic, Director, I'm sorry. Do you have dates for have you settled on dates for the convention next summer?
Yes, it's at the end of September. I want to say I can get those numbers for you. I will get those dates for you. I have them.
So toward the end of September.
Those are not in cement, I might say.
Okay.
But they're pretty firm. So it is toward the end, and I will get, before you leave, I will get you those dates.
Well, I just want to get it on the calendar, so.
I appreciate that.
I'm sure all
'cause
these
I-
guys would like the same thing.
Yes, because I think you're gonna definitely be touched. Thank you for asking that. Other questions?
Do you need any support for this testimony on the October 10th?
It is possible, indeed, Commissioner Putnam, there was some discussion about maybe putting you in the seat.
Okay.
We thought you'd be
Fine.
very, very good, and that could still happen, so stand by.
Okay.
General Robertson, who is head of the, help me here, Grayson, the Air Education and Training Command, I believe that's right. Am I getting there? I'm getting there, okay. He is going to be unable to come. He was coming because, of course, Altus and Vance are under his command. And his vice, the conflict that is preventing him from coming is also going to prevent his vice. Let's put us into a little bit of a scramble. The colonel from Altus is going to testify, and I think that's very good. He's being directly affected on a daily basis in fulfilling his mission at Altus Air Force Base. But I still think we need a general officer, so there is an effort right now. But stand by. You could be called up out of the reserve.
There's a numbered Air Force below command level at Air Education Training Command. I think it's 12th Air Force. You might want it, not 12th.
Okay.
We need to.
We
We can work.
Okay. The thought, there has been, we've reached out to General Levy, 3-star Tinker, but he's very, very familiar with this issue, and it affects Tinker too, and he knows how it affects Altus, Vance, the Tulsa Air Guard, the Oklahoma City Air Guard, and we haven't gotten a response from him yet. As you know, pretty close in time here. His calendar is obviously very busy, but also Adjutant General Willem. Interim Adjutant General Will, he's very familiar with this issue.
Good.
Knows how it affects the bases as well as the Air Guard units. So I think we're going to get covered and have a general officer. We're also going to have someone from the DOD Clearinghouse, which has kind of not been it hasn't been very helpful since it was created in 2011, but it does have a new administrator now. And one of the things that he feels very strongly about, it can, just like the weather changes things quickly, the outlook and how something is implemented, the federal regulations about what the DOD's duties are and what its responsibilities are can change very quickly from administration to administration. So what's the last backstop? What's the secure backstop? The state protecting an asset which is not only the nation's but also the state's. So he is going to be here, or his second in command is going to be here.
Okay.
Other questions?
Move on to item
All right.
number 5.
We have a new airport engineer with us. I think that, I don't think he's related to Winston Churchill. It's a good name. But he likes to go by Win. So Win Lusk, where's Win? Right here. Win looks forward to meeting all of you. Win had spent some time with the DEQ. His background is a little more in environmental engineering. He has his EIT and is going to sit for the engineer exam soon. So we're happy to have Win, and I encourage each of you to spend a few moments and introduce yourself and get to meet Win. He'd love to talk to you.
Welcome aboard, Win.
Watch out for this guy.
Item 6, the sale dues.
Thank you, Commissioner Amos. Our annual dues, we've been through this a number of times, I think 16 during my tenure, so I would ask your approval to pay. Our dues have not gone up. I think that's like 3 years, so I would ask for your approval to pay our annual dues to the sale.
Chair will entertain.
So moved.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Conway,
Aye.
Secretary Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Chairman Stuckey.
Aye. So ordered. Item 7, legislative items.
This is really no action required here, Commissioners. It's really a review. These are bills that we really started last session. So you've had several reports on them from myself and Sandra regarding these bills. These are the bills that we are pursuing this next session. I've already talked about the military training airspace, and I've also mentioned the aircraft excise tax charter exemption. You know that issue, I think, fairly well, that an owner can get their aircraft put on a charter ticket, and even if that aircraft has never flown for any charter operation at all, they still qualify. We're the only state that allows that, the only state that has the bar that low. And then Senate Bill 705 would remove, or I think actually remove or raise our cap on the aircraft excise tax. Last year, we were trying to raise that to $6 million. It got kind of in those last couple of weeks with the frantic efforts to come up with a budget. It got kind of placed on a shelf, but it's still alive, and we'll be pursuing that as well this next session. I would say interestingly, there's a lot more interest with the special session and the $215 million hole, which you've read about, which really is greater because we'll also lose about $400 or $500 million in federal funds for those affected agencies. There's been some discussion about the fact that, well, gee, the way the law is right now, with the aircraft excise tax capped at $4.5 million, and anything over and above that going to general revenue, it makes sense for us to tighten up those 18 exemptions to the aircraft excise tax, because that's clearly, at this point in time, that's the way we've chosen in Oklahoma to fund our responsibilities, is through the aircraft excise tax, the aircraft registration fees. They're critical. We attempted to raise the aviation fuel tax. That was met head-on by the commercial airlines and others opposing that. So that was we didn't get to follow up on that. But I think they're giving a little closer examination of the fact that we do have a lot of exemptions. This is one that the Incentive Evaluation Commission targeted as it just nonsensical. There's no accountability or integrity in this exemption with not having any kind of standard. We're the only state that has no standard, and we're losing on average $2.6 million a year. It estimated due to this exemption. Questions?
Anything to add, Sandra? Any questions? Financial report, item 8. Jane?
Good morning, Secretary, Chairman, Commissioners. In your packet behind tab 8, you'll find the FY18 financial information with numbers as of August 31st. I did it August because it was a little too early to get September stuff together. So as of August 31st, the Commission had an ending cash balance of $5 million with about $4.3 million encumbered. We also have an additional $1.3 million that's pre-encumbered that is remaining projects in the FY17 CIP that have not been granted yet. Our statutory collections for the month of July that get deposited the next month were $325,479. The total statutory revenues deposited from July 1st through August 31st of this year totaled $367,503 compared to $1,057,768 for the same time frame last year. So we have a little catching up to do. But it also shows how much our income changes all the time. As of August 31st of 17, the Commission's FY18 expenditures to date are $756,649. And we have been busy preparing the budget request to get it submitted. It had to be submitted by October 1st, and we got it turned in. Those documents are mostly requests on how the agencies run, how it's governed, and as well as the programs that we operate and the cost that has been, the money that has been expended on those programs in current years and then projections for the years ahead. So we got that turned in, and I guess that's all I have unless you have questions.
Jane, is that budget request, is that on our website, or could you make that available to the commissioners?
We can make it available, yeah. We'll put it out there.
Your approval is not required. We, of course, would place that before you if it was, but we do want to make it available to you, of course.
Anything else?
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Okay, Item 9, the capital improvement program consent docket. Grayson?
Morning, Commissioners, Mr. Secretary. How's everybody doing this morning? Three-year capital improvement program consent docket. As it states on the agenda, any of these items can be broken out and considered individually, should you all choose to do so. I'm going to go through these briefly, A, B, and C. These are projects that were aggregated together in the approved 18 to 20 CIP. We've just now selected the 3 airports they're going to get, what we call the apron hard stand. These are high-strength concrete hard stands to it's an innovative way to get some of our asphalt aprons that are in various states of disrepair up to standards so that larger business jets, turboprop aircraft, heavier aircraft can park on the apron without their loads damaging the existing pavement. And we don't have to spend $2 or $3 or $4 million reconstructing the entire apron. So basically we're trying to do what we can with the budget we have to get our airports as usable and serviceable as possible for the flying public. Item A for the first one is a hard stand project at Ardmore Municipal Airport. About $450,000 of total project cost to be funded with about $428,000 of state grant funds and a little over $22,000 of local matching funds. On item B, this is for a hard stand at the Muskogee-Davis Regional Airport. Total estimated cost about $175,000, funded with $166,000 of state grant funds and just shy of $9,000 of local matching funds. And then item C is a apron hard stand project at the Sand Springs Airport, William R. Pogue Municipal. Estimated total project cost about $175,000, funded with about $166,000 of state grant funds and just shy of $9,000 of local matching funds. I will stand for any questions.
Does any commissioner wish to pull one of these out for separate consideration? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent docket.
Approved.
Second?
We have a motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Conway,
Aye.
Secretary Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter, Chairman Stuckey.
Aye, so ordered. Item 10, capital improvement grant program consent docket. Dale?
Morning, Mr. Secretary, Commissioners. Have 5 items for your consideration this morning on the consent docket. First item is item A, which is the Ardmore Municipal Hard Stand. Consists of 2 75 by 150 concrete hard stands. Total cost is around $451,000. State share is $428,000. Sponsor share is about $22,000. This project has been bid, but the city has not had time to move the grant application through their process yet. So this approval will be contingent upon receiving an acceptable grant application from the city. Next item is for Carlton Landing. We currently have a contract with the engineering firm to do the design of the taxi lanes and apron areas for a hangar development at Carlton Landing. It's been uncovered that there's a water line that's going to have an impact on the hangar area. Historical documents show that it will have an impact. There's other people out there that do not believe that water line is where the drawing shows. So we're going to do an investigation out there and locate the actual water line and just see where it's at. We're hoping it's much closer to the road and will not impact it. Should we find the water line that has an impact, then we'll probably come back later with a request for additional funds to scoot the water line over. But this request is for $3,200 to move to locate the water line. If you notice, this airport is on state property, so we are basically the sponsor for it. There is no matching fund for this because the management agreement between the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission and the fixed-base operator is that the FBO will construct 11 hangars and put in a fuel farm out there, make this a real airport. And so they do not have any matching funds on this project.
Just a quick footnote, Commissioners, this is formerly Arrowhead, Mr. Secretary, and I think all of you know it's been a great success story. We entered into a contract an agreement ourselves and tourism with Kirk Humphreys to develop the airport in the way of, you know, hangars, fuel, et cetera, what you really got to have at an airport. If we expect we're going to get back to 9 based aircraft, which would make this airport eligible for federal funding again. So it's been a good thing. This is what we'd love to see happen at more airports.
Item C is at Kingfisher. This is amendment to a state grant for that airport where we constructed taxi lanes and back behind the hangar area. The amendment will fund the grant administration services that the sponsor failed to put on their original grant application. So this service was contracted for by the city. However, it failed to put it on the grant application that they submitted to us when they requested the grant for the construction. So this amendment will add and fund that. Total cost of the amendment is $4,500. The state share is about $4,000, and local share is $450. Item D, Mid-America Industrial Air Park. This is an amendment to that state grant there. During construction, they uncovered some undesirable material and did a little extra excavation and modification of the subbase for the hard stand. Total cost of the amendment is $1,140. State share is $1,000, and local match is about $58. The final project for your consideration is for a state grant for a project that's currently approved in our capital improvement program for Stillwater Municipal Airport. This is the final phase of a 3-phase project that realigns the parallel taxiway to runway 1735 and also adds on to the apron area, which is referred to as a taxi lane. We have received bids on this. Based on bids, the total project cost is just under $5 million. Federal grant funds is just under $4.5 million, made up of state apportionment and discretionary funds. State share is just under $250,000. Sponsor share is just $250,000. The commission is making half the sponsor's required federal match. And staff recommends approval on all the above items, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any commissioner wish to pull any one of these items off the consent docket? Seeing none request, I'd accept the motion.
I do have a question about Kingfisher. This taxi lane that goes behind the hangar, is that what they're,
Bring that back up. Yeah, they have a main park, main apron,
right?
and the yellow area is the area that we've added. It's opened up a new hangar area. We've kind of squeezed that photograph because just to the, I guess, to the left of that taxi lane, there's a house there that's been taken out. So the taxi lane is actually further away from that main hangar that you see there. So there's a hangar going in that area there. And so they're constructing hangars back in that area.
Okay. All right, thank you.
When did we pave Kingfisher? 4 years ago?
The runway
Yeah, the runway?
is about 4 or 5 years ago. We turned it from a turf runway into a concrete runway.
State and local monies entirely. A 50-50 proposition, I believe, because it's not in the NIPI, it's not in the federal system. Or, no, it's not, yeah. It's been there, I don't know how many based aircraft they have now, but getting a paved runway has certainly helped them. It happens to be, I think, one of Senator Inhofe's favorite airports. I know their legislators out there are very, very committed and supportive of their airport. Representative Sanders, Senator Yak.
Was there a local issue that kept it closed for a while?
There was a contractor issue that came up after the bids were taken. And
More than once, I went on final to find a big X on the runway.
there's quite a dispute there. This was actually bid in asphalt, and by the time they finally got all the negotiations done, they found a contractor that put in concrete instead of asphalt at the same price, so it worked out.
Okay.
One other footnote, commissioners, this, I don't know if it'll be the last, but maybe the last grant from us to, Stillwater will probably, with the next NIPI is submitted next fall, 18, will probably, well, it will. I mean, there's no, based upon the facts and data of their commercial service, it will become a primary commercial airport because of its emplanements. So it will go out of our CIP and deal directly with FAA. It's a success story.
What's your pleasure, Commissioners?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the capital improvement grant consent docket. Would you call the roll, please?
Vice Chair Conway,
Aye.
Secretary Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Chairman Stuckey.
Aye.
Thank you.
So ordered.
Dale, you're still up.
Item 11, commission to act as agent for the city of Durant. Dale?
Over the last 3 years, the city of Durant has had quite a bit of turnover over the Public Works Director and City Manager, and has kind of left the city without any knowledge or experience of how to move a airport project through the federal and state system. FAA has expressed concerns about whether it might be best to maybe even move this project back, because the city is behind in some of their paperwork.
Dale, you might describe the project, because it's a big one.
The project consists of overlaying the existing runway at this point, which is 5,000 by 75 feet, then also extending it 1,800 feet. And the FAA will participate in the overlay of the runway and extending the runway out to 1,200 feet, because that's what they can justify by their aviation demand. However, the Chickasaw Nation would like to have it extended 1,800 feet. So with the tribe money, they will fund the additional 600 feet to the extension.
Correction, Choctaws. And,
Choctaws.
It's hard to keep them all straight, but the Chickasaws get plenty of publicity, so we want to be fair.
So acting as agent, we would be the primary contact for the consultant during the design and construction phases. The state would not enter any contracts. The city would still do the contracts, but it would be after we've reviewed it and made the recommendation to the city. The city seems to be very acceptable of this time. They have not made that request yet, and it's just came about. I believe it would relieve a lot of stress out of the FAA, knowing that somebody that has some knowledge and experience of their policies and procedures would help the city, so.
We've done this before in Ada. I want to say a couple other places as well, where our statutory authority explicitly authorizes it. And I think it's very good and timely that we have this discretion and authority under our enabling legislation and can do this right now with respect to this grant to the city of Durant. A lot of money, over $6 million. We don't want it pushed back, because when things get pushed back, weird things happen.
I'll say that living in Durant, I know not firsthand, but I've seen the news, and it's not good for the administration of the city. A lot of turnover, 3 city managers in about 3 years. A lot of public works people come and go. So this makes absolute sense to act as their agent and help them out in this case.
Staff's recommendation is, should the city request us to be their agent, the staff recommends to the commission that we become the agent for the city of Durant for this project.
How many aircraft are based at Durant?
40 or 50?
Yeah.
50 to 60.
50 to 60.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion?
The Southeastern Flight School, of course, as well, is based there.
Motion to approve. Second.
I guess Commissioner Conway would know that.
Yeah.
Amos? We have a second?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Conway,
Aye.
Secretary Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Chairman Stuckey.
Aye, so ordered. Item 12, administrative rules for the Aeronautics Commission. Grayson?
And Commissioner Hunter undershot actually at 78 based aircraft with 2 jets. So I just looked at it right there.
Both those jets, are those both Choctaw? Or-
One jet's a Choctaw, and the other is a Citation 650 owned by a oil company, I believe. Choctaws also have a King Air, too. Administrative rules, item number 12A. As you all know, House Bill 2179, which is some APA cleanup language, passed last year. Doing some things, business-friendly items, some micro-siting. So we're going to allow micro-siting without requiring a permittee to come get another permit from us. We made some updates to the definition of incompatible purpose. Some other things that we've extended the deadline to allow the permittee to file that permit in the county clerk's office. We've done several things throughout the cleanup process of 2179, and we'd like approval to move forward with making changes to the administrative rules regarding the Aircraft Pilot and Passenger Protection Act to reflect those statutory changes that were made last session. I'll stand for any questions, and staff's going to recommend to move forward with the administrative rules process. That's drafting the rules, putting them out on the street for public comment, and then coming back more than likely in the January or the March meetings to get final approval from you all to submit those to the legislature.
Let me offer something, commissioners, if you'd like, with your approval, and if it meets your pleasure, we could consider all three rules items in a consent agenda with the understanding that you can pull one out if you'd prefer to do that.
Makes sense. What's item B?
Item B, similar request. I think we've talked about this a little bit before. We have a 3-year CIP. We know ODOT has an 8-year construction works program. One of the things that we would like to see happen is move our CIP from a 3-year to a 5-year program to match what FAA has. FAA airports have a 5-year ACIP, and so we'd like our capital improvement program to match that. It's good capital planning practice. It allows for airports to better plan for their future needs on down the road, as well as giving the FAA more certainty and hopefully getting us more discretionary dollars to flow into Oklahoma, showing that we're doing good things and planning well out into the future. So we'd like to make the changes to the administrative rules for the capital program to move from 3 to 5 years. There's also been some discussion about maybe changing the name, that some people don't understand capital improvement program. They better focus with construction program. So there's also some discussion there about maybe retooling or changing the name of the program. But the primary goal is to move from 3 to 5 years. We'll also probably add a timeline. Years 1 and 2 are going to be fairly set in stone. Year 3 would be considered a transition year. And then years 4 and 5 would be kind of considered a bit of an extended program. So the flexibility, 1 and 2, not very flexible. 3, moderate flexibility. And then 4 and 5 would be fairly flexible. I stand for questions on that one.
Item C?
Item C is a change to the airport grant program. I think you've heard us talk about the FAA's Airport Improvement Program, we call the AIP Handbook. It's kind of the Bible for FAA in directing projects and different things that can be funded and how they're supposed to be funded and ways to do drawdowns on grants, so on and so forth. In our administrative rules is kind of like our AIP handbook. But within our administrative rules, there is not a list of airport infrastructure items that could be funded by the commission through the airport grant program. And there's been questions that have popped up. Well, we have this 3rd runway at this airport. It's closed. It's been closed, but we want you to go rehab it. Well, common sense would say, well, no, we're not going to rehab it. But there's nothing in our administrative rules that says we can't go fund something on an unclosed run or on a closed runway. So some common sense items to list there would be like, we can't, unused or non-publicly used pavement at an airport would not be able to be funded by the commission. Simple things like that would be on this list of airport infrastructure items that could or could not be funded by the commission's airport grant program.
And we'll see these again.
Yes,
This is just to start the process.
Start the process.
Yeah, it's a
We've, of
long
course, been very
process.
mindful on the items, commissioners, that I didn't want to see to my dismissal or your removal by the governor, so we haven't funded closed runways. So I wouldn't think
Okay.
you'd need to do a rule on that, but maybe so.
What's your pleasure, commissioners?
Says that they're looking for permission to proceed with the rulemaking process.
Right.
It sounds straightforward. I so move.
Second.
We have motion second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Conway,
Aye?
Secretary Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Chairman Stuckey.
Aye, so ordered. Item 13 is the Flight Inspection Services Agreement. Grayson?
We have we're currently in a flight inspection agreement with the FAA to provide flight inspection services for the commissioning of light fixtures such as ODLs, omnidirectional approach light systems, which we put in place, PAPIs, precision approach indicators, which show an aircraft on where they're at in their visual glide slope descent, reels, runway and identifier lights, so on and so forth. The original $50,000 that we funded, that balance is slowly coming down. Right now, it's of that $50,000 that we've spent, about 35% has actually been for state projects where we expended the money, and about 65% has been FAA-funded projects where a sponsor, instead of the sponsor having to enter into an agreement with the FAA, which is a time-consuming process, usually it takes about 3 to 6 months, we'd have a short one-page agreement with the sponsor that they can use our agreement with FAA as a contractual vehicle to request this flight inspection. So a little government efficiency, making, FAA only has to sign one contract with the state of Oklahoma. Sponsor would then have to sign a simple agreement with the state, and we get those monies back. So about 65% of that $50,000 has actually been put back into our account from these sponsors once they're able to make their drawdowns on the FAA grants. So that being the case, we're coming down to balance of zero. We need to repopulate that agreement, fund it with another $50,000, and go down the road and do the same thing again for the next year or two. Staff recommends approval.
Very good. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Conway,
Aye.
Secretary Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Chairman Stuckey.
Aye, so ordered. Item 14, DOD Office of Economic Adjustment Grant.
Commissioners, as you heard Director Byrd mention earlier, Senate Bill 477, a lot of the military training airspace issues that have popped up. One of the things that have been discussed amongst the military leadership, Senator Inhofe's office, Congressman Russell's office, and others, is the need for a statewide land use study. North Carolina's going through, North Carolina, Virginia is going through it right now. Arizona has gone through this process. And what this is the DOD has an Office of Economic Adjustment that gives out grants for JLUS projects. I'm sure most of you have heard of joint land use studies. That's specifically around a base to help out the local community with their zoning ordinances and their regulations to protect the noise-sensitive areas, to protect the runway protection zones, so on and so forth. All those JLUS studies come from the Office of Economic Adjustment. This popped up towards the tail end of last session. Obviously, as Senate Bill 477 didn't make it through, the Office of Economic Adjustment said, well, you all being the state of Oklahoma, would be a good candidate to receive a grant for a statewide land use study to develop some GIS tools to help local communities, counties, cities better implement their zoning practices. And so in those discussions over this summer, originally, Strategic Military Planning Commission was going to be the project manager, the leader, the organizer. Given that this is a federal grant process, the Strategic Military Planning Commission doesn't have the ability to apply for federal grant. They don't have a DUNS number. They don't have an EIN number that you have to go through to do that federal grant process. Aeronautics Commission does. There is some discussion, well, maybe we could use the South Central COG of Oklahoma, but that's just one area of Oklahoma. This is really a statewide study, so why is that one individual COG is going to be the grant applicant? Amongst the discussion up until about 4 weeks ago was, well, what's the statewide entity that can apply for a grant, that has the technical expertise, that knows military airspace, that knows airspace in general across Oklahoma, and an agency that has staff that can run this, because Strategic Military Planning Commission, they're just the commissioners, they don't have staff. And well, lo and behold, Aeronautics Commission. So we've gotten requests from Mike Cooper, Chairman of the Strategic Military Planning Commission, to be the project manager, to be the entity that would run the grant and run the project for this statewide land use study. Strategic Military Planning Commission has already approved, I believe it was at their July or August meeting, for the match. This is federal grant, 90-10 match, just like FAA grants are. They have funded the matching funds for this grant. So in talking with the Office of Economic Adjustment, with the COG, with Mike Cooper, with our congressional offices, they've all recommended that, hey, Aeronautics Commission would be the best to house this, given that we have the technical expertise. and given that we have the ability to apply for a federal grant. So what's before you today really is moving forward with the RFP process and putting a proposal out on the street, getting bids and proposals back from consultants. There's a lot of consultants, just like we have airport consultants for airport projects. There's military, airspace, and land use consultants as well that do this across the country for the various states, as well as the various military bases individually. In addition to that, we also need to enter into an agreement with the Strategic Military Planning Commission so that they can provide the local match funding to us as we administer the grant process and go through that process over the next several months and years. That being said, I understand this is kind of new, so I'll stand for questions or comments or anything.
I'm kind of curious of the involvement of the commission, in other words, time. And I know, Vic, you're under your manning tables right now. You don't have the staff that's on the manning document. So I look at some of the other things that are going on, that all the things that are happening in the Aeronautics Commission, and I'm just wondering how much time this is going to require of the staff and the ability to get it done.
If I could, and you can elaborate, Grayson, we won't be doing, we'll be administering, just like we do a system planning grant from FAA right now. We'll be the project manager, if you will, or have a liaison. The actual work will be done by this consultant. Just as a consultant did our economic impact study, just as a consultant will do our pavement management study and system, and just as a consultant we'll do our system planning grant. So I don't foresee a burden that would stretch us, just like I've been saying indeed, and I think this is in recognition of our expertise. There's only 2 agencies in the state of Oklahoma that have siting authority with respect to wind turbines, cell phone towers, et cetera. I may be wrong about cell phone towers, so I'll take that back. Mr. Potter would know about that. But wind turbines specifically, and that's the FAA, a federal agency, and the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission, but only around airports. And Senate Bill 477 is really, it's about extending our jurisdiction to include military training airspace, the military training routes, military traffic patterns, and drop zones. And I've been asked that very question, well, gosh, you don't have the staff to, well, no, I actually believe we've been doing just fine. We have 3 people dedicated to administering APA, Grayson, Catherine, and Jennifer. And I do expect that, of course, applications will go up if Senate Bill 477 becomes law. We'll keep a close eye on it. At the moment, I don't expect that any other staff is going to be required. I think we'll be able to perform the duties under Senate Bill 477 without adding additional staff. If I feel we do, I'll be going and seeing Secretary Patterson about that, because we certainly want to make sure we can carry out our duties that are contemplated under Senate Bill 477. But I don't expect that this particular study will have any unduly burdensome impact upon staff.
Vic, I suspect this will take considerably less time than the economic impact study that's recently completed.
I would think so. Grayson's already done a draft for him. That's that famous map you've seen of all the military training routes. So I don't think so. I've not been close to one of these, so but I would doubt. That was over 7,000 man hours. I wouldn't expect that in this study.
Okay, thank you.
Is there, it seems that we're setting a precedent here moving forward. Is there any chance that we might be able to recover some of our costs or charge for that? For example, you said that it's not unusual for them to go outside to obtain that expertise outside in normal circumstances. Is there any way that the commission can be compensated for your time or for our time in doing this?
That's a very good
Ways to
question.
raise additional funding. If you're providing services, you should be charging for that.
We do receive $200 an application right now under APA. We've been very narrow, very fair, and very balanced with respect to that. Those that are just checking with us to see if they have to apply, we don't charge them anything. We could have taken a little more liberal view of it and said, well, in order to do that, you got to file an application. We did not. Felt that would be unfair to industry and business, and we did not. For what we're contemplating here, there's no provision in statute right now to compensate us for that time. I don't know that the grant, the grant might potentially, as with some FAA grants, we get compensated for our time. So I'll let Grayson address that.
And that's correct. Yeah,
If it were for my airport, since we have very little control over this one, if it were for my airport, would the commission step in and do that for free?
No, probably not.
Exactly. Then you should be charging for it.
But we'd very fairly consider it.
No, you can in the grant application, in talking with the Office of Economic Adjustment, you can put staff hours, travel, hotels, vehicle expenses, so on and so forth. That can be charged to the grant because it's part of the administration and the project management towards that grant, so.
And keep in
absolutely.
mind, we won't make the local match here. That's being made by the Strategic Military Planning Commission.
Any other questions, comments?
So as I understand it, you're applying for a grant that's gonna let you do this. That's what this approval's for.
That's correct. It's to move forward with the RFP grant application process and to enter into an agreement
Okay.
with the OSMPC
We'll
for the
fund a
matching
cons-
funds.
We'll fund a consultant doing it.
Okay. I move we approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Conway,
Aye.
Secretary Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Amos,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Chairman Stuckey.
Aye, so ordered.
And we will be back once the RFP process is done, the grant's been applied for, we'll be back with you to approve the formal contract. So we will be back to discuss this at least once more, but probably 2 or 3 more times before it's all said and done.
Aviation impact study update. What's new, Grayson?
Well, I know at our last commission meeting, I promised that at this meeting, we would do a full-blown update, probably in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 minutes. But we have an award ceremony to go to. I think we're being recognized as the prime sponsor of the year for newspapers and education, for our aviation education grant. So with that being said, I'd like to get a little guidance from you all to suggest what we should do. 2 options I see on the table. One, we could potentially bring in the consultant, Barb Fritchie, who is our project manager, who did all the training. You can see here on the picture, she did this training at OML, as well as here at Rose State College, where we had airports, city managers, city officials, state leaders attend these training sessions. We can bring her in, maybe call a special meeting in November that we can get everybody, or at least a majority of the commissioners to attend for an hour training session, so that you all can go out and spread the good word of the economic impact study. Or we can dedicate 30 or 40 minutes at the December meeting where I can talk and give you the similar presentation that Barb would have given you at the November meeting. So with that being said, I'm up for ideas or thoughts, theories.
Barb might be able to come in December.
And she could come in December, true. If we want to do an hour-long meeting in December, I just don't know, since that meeting's already been set, I don't know her schedule yet for that meeting.
Well, we do have a pretty good Reader's Digest condensed version,
You
and
do.
thank you.
Our-
I think it's
our-
done very well, Sandra. Thank you.
our-
I can take credit for that, but I can't. Barb's team did that, so.
Okay.
Our intent here is to go down a little bit into the detail for you. After
Mhm.
all, the study would not have happened without your approval and approving the 200.
How many items are coming up on tap on the December meeting?
How many items?
I think December is going to be a fairly light
I
month.
think fairly light.
Yeah.
So we could dedicate a half hour, 45 minutes at that meeting.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what
That-
we needed.
All right.
Meet with everyone's,
Grayson can do it.
okay, got that?
I can run it. I can do it.
Okay.
I think Grayson can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra? Upcoming events?
Morning, Commissioners. I have the best job here because I get to bring the good news. The good news is there's lots of aviation events happening in the state. And if you'll turn behind tab number 15, you will see that. And we've also been working with Commissioner Hunter's staff to help Sundance with some of their events as well. And wanted to point out, though, that we are receiving an award, as Grayson mentioned, from the Newspapers in Education program that was here just last month through, or in August, through Catherine Tabor's Aviation Education program. And we are receiving the Sponsor of the Year award, so we're very excited about that. And also, in concert with the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association, we are going to host a Women in Aviation Day brunch at Wiley Post, and we're hoping to have 200 to 300 people there, including mothers and daughters and grandmothers and people that are going to help inspire young women to seek aviation careers. And so we're working with Christy Slater and Atlantic. Christy, are you here? Come up for a second. So we're working with them, and you may have heard of the pilot Beverly Bass. Beverly Bass was the first woman pilot to be hired by American Airlines, and she has a Broadway show about her life. She is not the actress in it, but Catherine actually went to New York City, saw the play. Beverly Bass is strongly considering being our keynote speaker, and we're looking forward to that. And Christy, you want to tell them kind of, you want to say something?
Catherine went on her own dime.
Oh, yeah, no.
State
The commission did not
sponsored
send her to
business
scout the
trip.
play,
To
so.
make that clear,
Yeah.
for the record, Secretary Patterson.
Good morning, Commissioner. She's going to put me on the spot here. We just finished the permitting process through the Department of Airports to start planning this event at Wiley Post. It's going to take place in Atlantic Aviation's hangar. It's going to be an upscale event. Cassandra's involved, I know. So we're really excited, and we really appreciate this opportunity.
So we're pleased to partner with OAOA, and I would stand for questions. Thank you, Christy.
Good show.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
What can you tell us about the license tag real quick?
Oh, yeah, let me show you this.
That's it.
Okay, this is, sorry, I messed up, I got excited. Okay, this is, I want you to look at your screens if you will. This is Pearl Carter Scott, who Women in Aviation Day was named for. This December 9th is her birthday. Pearl Carter Scott is a famous Chickasaw who is from Marlow, Oklahoma, and she has passed. But she began to fly with Wiley Post when she was 13 years old. There's a movie made about her called Pearl. It's a great movie. If you want to rent that, I highly recommend it. We're also working with the Chickasaws on something, and I don't want to say right now, but we're working with the Chickasaws on doing something for school children to also promote Women in Aviation Day, and specifically young people going into aviation careers there. So this artist is Chris Nick, and Chris Nick has allowed us graciously to use the image. And also Chris Nick did our license plate, and so you'll see the license plate there. And we have had lots of interest in the license plate, and we're very excited. We have submitted it to the Oklahoma Department of Corrections. They're printing our plate this week, and we should have some samples for the commission December at our next meeting. But they go on sale November 1. We've already had lots of interest, and I don't think we'll have any problems getting our 100 plates to make sure that they go into production.
When do we get our plates?
I don't know.
As soon as you pay for them.
No, that's not true.
That's not true.
No, that's not true. I don't know. It would be up to the Department of Corrections to give you a timeline. I would probably guess a couple of months. Any questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
They're going to be worth the wait.
Thank you, Sandra. Any final comments, Vic?
Sandra, I like the way Christie put that. Sandra upscales things. Yes, she certainly does. And this license plate, Sandra talks about she doesn't have children. Well, I think she does now. She has birthed this child, the license plate. It's been a labor of love, but I think it's something we're all going to be very, very proud of. I did this purposely. I wanted to do it this way. I mentioned the award NASAO recently gave me. I've been fortunate. I've been very privileged. During my time, 16 years as director, I've received several awards. AOPA's Heart Ramp Award, the General Stafford Award. None of those awards would have been possible. Those awards are not really just to me. They're a recognition of the excellence of your staff, of the commission, of the programs we've done, of what we've done to make a difference. It pleases me so much that every member of our staff, they don't see their role as one of power or authority, or they see it as a role of service. What can we do to help cities? What can we do to help the aviation and aerospace industry? and I'm just very, very proud of them. It is the staff that's made it possible for me to give the time to NASAO, where I do believe we've had an impact on the federal and national level, but only with such a staff could I have given such time. That, I think one other thing I would, we did get this award. We'll have some reports to you about that when we convene next time. And with that, I have no other than to say thank you very much, Secretary Patterson, for coming. Really glad to have you. Glad to have your support. I'm glad you know more about flying and aviation than I do. That makes me feel safe. And we're glad to have you as our secretary. Appreciate your
Thank you,
support.
Director.
Thank you, Vic. The next meeting is December 6th, here, 10 o'clock. Is there any other business to come before the commission? Any comments from the public? If not, we are adjourned.